On the surface, sexual abuse, and indeed abuse in all its forms, is as old as time itself. The mechanism of this abuse is a transactional economy. Power and control are facets of the same stone. The perpetrator controls the victim and feeds off their fear and revulsion, and the act is sometimes consummated with a sexual conclusion. Men soon discovered the weaknesses of other men and used these sexual weaknesses as mechanisms to gain control through bribery. On a spiritual level, the psychic energy of the trauma that is released during a child sacrifice or molestation is the food upon which dark entities will feast, and in exchange, depending on the scale of the transaction, the participant is given wealth, foreknowledge of the future, longevity, magical destruction of their enemies, and anything else the imagination can contrive. In a sacrifice, the spilling of blood and the subsequent death of the victim are the greatest tokens of value in this economy. Man quickly worked out that sacrificing an animal had less value than sacrificing a child. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome to yet another installment of The Human Devil. And we're winding up now. And today's show is just going to be a doozy. You'll notice I've put up, as of yesterday, I got some emails, people asking if they could donate. Now, I've never really taken any money except for book sales, but I mean, to keep doing this, it's a lot of work. So if you do feel like donating, it's seen-that-tinker@protonmail.com, but don't feel obliged at all, okay? This is an act of service, and I'm going to do it whether I receive donations or not. It's just for those people who asked, okay? So there you go. First, hi. Hello. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're surviving the series. You know, each chapter becomes, darker and darker and darker. And this is a gradual transition so that you can stay consciousness, because darkness has the ability to put people to sleep. So if you can't handle the vibration of darkness, what will happen is that you will just become kind of unconscious. You'll be awake, you'll be walking around, your eyes will be open, your ears will be open, you'll be able to carry on small talk. Oh, what's for lunch? Hey, have you seen this TV show? But the darkness will not be able to assimilate into your consciousness so that it can be explained. And this is, I guess you could say, a natural defense mechanism. And so to incorporate darkness, you have to acclimatize yourself to it very, very slowly. There is what I would call a baptism in darkness, in which you get the full measure of it. And it's not really like anything too scary, but I'll describe my experience. It's taken me a long time to be able to describe this, okay? So it went on for 72 hours, and it went on when I was writing The Light of Darkness, in the Belial chapter, by the way, where I was describing Sir Clement Freud and Madeleine McCann and all that stuff. My consciousness crossed over into a dark world, like the world of darkness, this is why I came to the understanding that darkness is its own entity. It's alive. It's not a non-entity like physics tells us. The physics tells us it's just the absence of light. That is not true. Darkness is a whole world beside the world of light. And you will not understand reality until you assimilate darkness. And that's what I'm trying to do in these discourses, in these books, in everything, is help you with the assimilation of darkness. Okay? Because it's part of your spiritual journey. And by the way, any path out there, I don't care who it is, I don't care how holy you think the path is, if they're not telling you the same thing about darkness, they're lying. Okay? They're lying. Now, a lot of people who seem to be speaking with knowledge are actually commiserating with entities or beings. And the entity or being could be benign, you know. So when you get somebody giving you a message as, let's say, a Pleiadian contactee, they're just the channel through which the information comes. It doesn't mean that they've assimilated the information. It doesn't mean that their consciousness understands all of the information. Okay? And this is especially true in the circles of darkness. Okay? Many of the participants in this cult don't have a clue what they're doing. Many of them, like the Hollywood stars and stuff, I mean, in their minds, they think they're just playing a game. Like it's all unreal and non-existent, and they're just pantomiming it. I'm going to pantomime the devil. I'm going to pantomime demonic possession and make a mockery of it. Okay? Which is fine. I mean, everything is allowed, right? There's nothing that you should really judge. Never judge. Okay? Because judgment is karmic transference. And let me be very, very clear about this, okay? Because one of the reasons a lot of the disclosure is coming out now is it's a tactical. Remember, this is occult warfare. These people are smarter than us. Okay, let's admit that openly. These people are smarter than us. The only chance we have of surviving and winning is to stay in grace and to receive revelation. Stay in grace and receive revelation. Okay? To stay in grace means to stay in love. And you can carry a little bit. The love will protect you in the dark world. I had a kind of a bubble around me. So what is the dark world like? Imagine existing at the bottom of the ocean, but without any of the pressure that would crush your body, and without the need for oxygen. That's the dark world. Bottom of the ocean, without the pressure, and without the asphyxiation. So you're in complete darkness. Every movement is sort of slow and mechanical, like you're zombified. It's extremely peaceful. It's not scary. It's extremely, extremely peaceful. It feels like a kind of eternal rest in some ways. I can certainly understand why some people come to enjoy it so much. Okay? The darkness must be assimilated because it's part of the teaching down here. The light must be assimilated. It's part of the teaching down here. And then when you assimilate the two, you start to work your way towards the non-duality position. Okay? So there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, it's all basically a projection, a hologram to begin with, and a learning theater for developing souls is what planet Earth is. It's a learning field. Okay? Now, this is not to make us sound as though we're kindergarten in the universe. Nothing could be further from the truth. A human being can more easily assimilate with the divine than many of these advanced extraterrestrials. And this is part of what the experiment down here is. They're trying to understand more about God, the Creator, through the creation of us and through the DNA experiments. That's what they're doing. Okay? So everybody's doing the same thing. They are the experimenters, we are the experiment. Okay? Think of it like the first Captain America, where they give Steve Rogers the serum. They don't know for sure what's going to happen. They don't know if it's going to kill him or anything. It's a terrifying experience. The scientists are very smart. But when the process is over, he's Captain America. And when this process, this experimentation is over, or the cycle we're in now is over, many of us are going to be spiritually Captain America. This is what's going on. So this is the good news. This is the good news. So when you're looking for service, you're looking to be of service in life, number one, don't interfere with people's evolution. Just leave them alone. Just provide what you have to provide and put it out there for anybody who needs it. Okay? It's like the way an Amish community might share their crops. Okay? So I grow corn. I have more corn than my family can eat. I sell some. I make a little bit of money because even though you're Amish, you still need money. And the rest of the corn you give away to your neighbors. Okay? It's like that. So in writing The Devil in Us, I gave myself permission to talk about darkness by sharing the darkness of my own upbringing and the darkness of my family line. 2 suicides at the grandfather level, and then leading up to me and my son who have turned it around. Okay? But steeped in darkness, steeped in Abrahamic darkness. The whole family. Okay? So how do I give back? Well, I've assimilated my darkness and I'm sharing my understanding of darkness. It's that simple. And darkness is a very important teaching, and nobody's out there giving it. The Christians are terrified of it, which keeps them in an undeveloped state. Okay? Now, understanding darkness, remember, I have to constantly repeat myself. It does not mean you practice darkness. So this dark world I went into, from that dark world, that dark consciousness, you could do anything. Anything. You could kill 100 people with a knife, and you wouldn't feel anything. The darkness insulates you. Remember, it's like being in the womb again. Okay? So a lot of dark human beings who practice darkness and who pursue power, they use this dark world as the shield to keep them from being destroyed, because there's a natural self-destruct mechanism in human beings. Okay? We will self-destruct if we go too dark, but the darkness can come in and protect us. Let me give you an example of self-destructing by darkness. The post-traumatic stress disorder of a lot of soldiers in the United States who returned from the illegitimate wars of Iraq and Afghanistan and the illegitimate war of Vietnam in many ways. Okay? Post-traumatic stress disorder. Right? They can't sleep, they have bad dreams, they just, it never really goes away. They say there are healings for it, medicine for it, but there really isn't, because it's spiritual. Right? We know now through what we've been through medically with the epidemic, that the medical institution is a big part of this dark world now. All institutions are really, but we got, the medical one we saw front and center. You see what education's doing, right? See what the military's doing. So, I'm just going to come right out and say this. When the Islamic world calls us the Great Satan, they're not that far off. And we always trumpet our freedoms. Freedom to do whatever you want. Okay? And we always point out their lack of freedom. And the classic example is the woman in the burqa. Well, that woman in the burqa will never degrade herself on OnlyFans. Okay? She'll never be used by 50 men in her life who don't love her. She will always be protected and allowed to be a woman in that society. Please don't confuse what I'm saying with an endorsement of the burqa. What I'm endorsing is the value of chastity and modesty, something women have completely lost in the Western societies. And part of the plan with these incursions into the West is kill the men and mass rape of the women. Okay, so you might want to be conscious of how sexy you look walking around, because that immodesty, that display of power, will be challenged by these immigrants coming in. Okay? This is all part of the plan. All part of the plan. Now, whether it works or not, I don't know. I don't know. I hope not. But at the same time, I would have to ask aloud, what then will be the corrective measure for realigning Western society with a more balanced approach to life and get us back in the cycle of creation, which is family and children, and stop being so bloody selfish, which we've become. Unbelievably selfish. Okay? Me too. I'm not standing above it all. I'm chastising myself as much as anyone else who identifies with what I'm saying. Okay? I took on a family over here. I got married again. You know, we're not in childbearing years. I'm 57, 58 in July. My wife is 50, 51 in July. So we're not having any more children, but I mean, I have so many nieces and nephews, it isn't funny. And I make way more money than anybody else in my family. And, you know, am I going on lavish vacations, renting, 5-star Airbnbs at the beach, drinking beer and buying expensive quads or all-terrain vehicles so I can go sport riding up in the mountains on the trails here? No. Most of my extra money goes to my family. And I'm happy to do it because I was a selfish bastard in Canada, except for the unconditional love and devotion I gave to my son, who was the first person to really open my heart on a physical level in the world. It's possible for your heart to be opened mystically, to receive divine love, the unconditional love of the divine, and still find it difficult to translate that to human life because of the inherent vulnerability, especially if you're raised in the kind of torturous and traumatic circumstances I was raised in. But all things are possible for those who keep trying. And you have to keep trying. Can't ever give up. That's all there is to it. So today, in the Human Devil Part 6, we're going to get into it in a way that is really quite something. You know, this part of the Human Devil will help you understand why I wrote the last Free Breath chapter at the beginning of the middle of the book. And I'm speaking to those of you who've read it. And if you haven't read it, for crying out loud, get the book. You see that email down there with the PayPal? If you can't afford the book, send me an email at that email. You don't have to donate anything. I'll send you an EPUB of the book. Free. Just read the book and go through the podcasts again. This is a postdoctoral course in what's going on in the world. Spiritually, economically, socially, psychologically. Nobody else is doing this. Now, there are better people at every topic I talk about. If I talk about Roswell, I mention Roswell as part of my overall thesis of what's going on. Now, you can go out and do a Roswell research cycle on your own. I mean, it would take you a couple hours a day for a month or 2 months to digest all the material that's out there. Roswell is a whole subset of this world. The nuclear testing is a whole subset of this world. Okay? And that opened up portals as well. And it's all about opening up portals. They do with science now what they used to do only with magic, because science is more efficient at it. Technology is more efficient at it. And the splitting of the atom in the atomic bomb was part of the satanic agenda. That's why everyone involved in it was Jewish and probably a Kabbalist. Okay? Don't think for a moment that this magic just exists in the world of, black robes and candlelit ceremonies. No, it exists in the laboratories as well. Okay? So, the first thing we need to understand is, what is it that's being worshipped here? Okay, so before I get into the material I've prepared to play and the pictures I have for this show today, let me just finish up with Karin Hustebot a bit, okay? So here is Corinne's awakening process. Here's how darkness and horror awakened her to the divine. And darkness and horror can awaken you to the divine. Some might say that's even its role. Okay? Sounds horrible, but, how many of those born-again Christian stories do you hear where the person was it was the darkness of their lives that led them to the love of Christ? Okay? It's the same thing happens in the Buddhist world. The people who go into Buddhism are a little bit different. Okay? Christianity really appeals to a certain economic and education level. But there's a spiritual path for everybody. And I'm not saying economic and education level in a derogatory way, but Christianity, it's the most simple and direct path. Also the hardest to live the words of the Christ. It's easier to meditate 2 to 3 hours a day than it is to live the words of the Christ 24 hours a day. So you discover yourself as soul by abandoning all notion of ego and possession. This is what the Gospels are about. If somebody doesn't have a shirt, you take a shirt off, you give them yours. You walk around without a shirt because you saw someone with no shirt. How many Christians do you know? Not many. Very, very hard path. It works if you live it completely. It works. It will produce God consciousness if you live it completely. The Christ did not give erroneous teachings. Okay? But even if you live it partly, he'll give you his help. He'll give you his love. It's there for everybody. He'll give you his protection. It's there for everybody in the human race. Everybody. Okay? So we begin with Corinne in the 1980s. There's a boy who disappears. An 8-year-old boy is on a way to a soccer match. He's not supposed to leave the house, but without his parents' permission, he follows his older brother down the street in Belgium. Never comes home. They never found the body. They never found anything. He just completely disappeared. And at the time, Corinne had a daughter the same age. Was deeply, deeply disturbed by the story. Could not go back to a normal life after that one story. So the trauma of that experience awakens something in her. She begins to work in the field, first by getting educated. The psychology degrees, all of these things, and she begins a specialized education in child abuse and child predators. Becomes so good at it that she starts to lecture all over the world and give theories contrary to what other national criminal organizations are teaching in their profiling schools. The one example I gave in a previous podcast or a previous reading, at the beginning of the show, I start with a short reading from the chapter that we're talking about, where they thought at Quantico and these other places that serial killers had no empathy, and Corinne said, no, that's completely wrong. They actually have more empathy than you or me. They're the most empathetic people on the planet. What they lack is compassion. If they didn't have empathy, they would not have any joy. They would not have any release or satisfaction in the torture, rape, and mutilation of the victim. That's empathetic. Jeffrey Dahmer yesterday pretty much said the same thing. So Corinne has in many ways pioneered the way people look at the serial killer and the child predator. It's really quite remarkable what she's done with her life. Okay? Then she goes on in her career, and she's about 15 years or so into her career, and she's asked to go and interview this guy in an old prison, an old stone prison, couple hour or 2 hours outside of France, sort of a rural place. You could just imagine the vibes and the ghosts in a place like that. Probably a 200 or 300-year-old prison, still operating in France. And she interviews this guy for, the authorities ask her to go and interview these people. She's one of the few people that these kinds of killers and child predators will talk to, because she can get them to talk because she shows them compassion. Now, you may say they don't deserve it, blah, 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 but we need what's in their head. We need to know why they're doing what they're doing. So you need to get over your judgment. Remember what I said, never judge. Okay? Even what's going on, as I present to you what the Zionists are doing and everything, don't judge them. Love them. Love them. Because if you judge them, your judgment is always a petition, cosmically, it's always a petition for experience. Always. So when you judge this sort of murderous regime, what you're asking for is the experience of that. Always the same thing. So she interviews this guy twice. He shows up one time, and he's a completely normal human being. The very next day he comes in, he's a completely different dude. And his eyes go completely black. And he's physically aggressive with her. So what happens to Corinne? Suddenly the psychological model is broken. This is not psychological. This is multidimensional. Similar journey is the journey of Jerry Marzinsky, the psychiatric counselor in the U.S. prison system who came to the conclusion that there's no such thing as schizophrenia, the voices are real, and these are breached people who have negative spirits attached to them. And I'm not saying demonic per se, they could just be human beings who've died and don't have the energy to move beyond the lower astral and hang around. Okay? That's what schizophrenia is, in my opinion. Okay, so we know from this realization, if you can realize it, and remember, anything I say you can go and research on your own. You can go Jerry Marzinsky, okay? Donnie at Spellbreakers podcast just did an interview with him, I think shortly after his first interview with me. It's one of the best interviews Jerry's ever given, so go to the Spellbreaker podcast and look at the Jerry Marzinsky interview. Use your highest faculties. Use your intuition. Look at his body language. Look at his eyes. You can tell when somebody's lying. People know when they're being told the truth. Right? That's why all these political whack jobs, the Justin Trudeau's and Joe Biden's and Tony Blair's of the world, they all have this very controlled and orchestrated body language to confuse people who are reading them, which is your first clue. They're lying. Pathological liars. Okay? Pathological liars. So Corinne becomes aware of the fact that there's a spiritual dimension to this. Stage 2 of her evolution. Stage 3, she begins to interview people or be contacted by people as she becomes more famous who have been victims in these cults but not killed. Now this is everywhere on the internet now. Everywhere. Just go to YouTube and just do a search for ritual Satanism. There's a woman in Australia, Asian woman in Australia, who's got a great channel. I forget her name, but her name is Gabby Chong. And she just interviews survivors of Masonic families, Kabbalistic Satanism, and they all say the same thing. Now, you should also know that the other side has infiltrated the alternative movement. And they have people out there now speaking about victimhood and everything, but they're actually still working for the cult. This is a very deep topic, okay? And it takes a long time to build the discernment. I mean, some of you who listen to me are probably highly intuitive and you'll know. Right? But there's a lot of people like that now as well. A lot of people like that. Okay? So when Corinne goes into the ritual world, she confirms what she learned at the old Paris stone prison. There's a spiritual dimension to this. They get together. And not only that, the people doing this are the top of society. This is Corinne's conclusion. They're at the top of society. Okay? Nobility, high-level banking, high-level business, billionaires. Not all of them, Not all of them per se, but a significant number of them. Hollywood types, stars, celebrities. You know the old story about making a deal with the devil? It's kind of like that. But these days that deal comes in the form of a contract signed with a talent agency or a management group that will take your career to the next level if you do this, 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 and this. If you promote this, 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 and this. If you look closely, when you develop the eyes for this, you see it everywhere. You know, have you ever noticed the disproportionate number of people in Hollywood and the music industry who, at the beginning of their career, when they're just starting out, they lose somebody very close to them? Like there's sudden death. A child, a brother, a mother, a father, the child especially. Okay? Many of them lose children. Okay? Basketball stars. List goes on and on and on and on. You pay the price, you get the prize. Remember what I said about the blood offerings, the simple blood offering of a palamayombi. I'm going to kill a chicken and your ex-wife is going to give you what you want in your divorce, or she's going to realize the spirits will kill her. They'll create a car accident or something. I'll take care of you. That's the lowest level of it. At the highest level, you can do extraordinary things with power-based spirituality. You can do extraordinary things, and it's all allowed. Don't judge it. Don't participate in it, but don't judge it. Okay? Let's get into this now.
The Star of David, where does that symbol come from?
It's never written explicitly in the Bible itself.
Is it in the Talmud? Perhaps. Is there a passage in the Bible about that, or no?
No.
Okay. So you're not really sure exactly where that comes from?
No. You got me.
Is it nobody knows,
Yeah,
huh?
I don't know. I'm not, yeah.
Because I know it's called the Star of David.
Yeah.
Does it have anything to do with David?
No, I don't think so. There must be somewhere, I do not remember exactly what the association was.
Okay. I believe that what they call the Star of David is actually the Star of Remphan. Because when you study the Bible, you'll see that when they worshipped other gods, the Bible talks about them carrying the banner of the star of their god Remphan.
You rejected the God of the Bible. You took up for yourself the star, that's the six-pointed star, of your God, called Remphan or Kiyun. All these were names for Moloch. But the God they worship, the great architect, is Moloch, the star god.
Yeah, it's actually the Star of Moloch, which is what they also call the Great Architect, or the Star God, which is what all these Satanist-type people all worship. That's whose star it is. And interestingly, it's also the star used in Freemasonry, which they say is basically has the same beliefs as the Jews, which is that everyone on earth basically needs to be killed except for them. At the high levels. They don't teach... See, that's the thing. They don't... You can go to a Freemason lodge, you'll find a bunch of dirty cops there, and probably some lawyers and some people who want to, like, make money. And they have no idea what it's all about. But at the very top, it's the same. There appears to be a lot of people who call themselves Jews now, who are actually from Khazaria, which is an area basically where the Ukraine is, where a lot of Jews are now moving. The Laz people, who are from Khazaria, also use the same symbol, the six-pointed star. So the Khazarian people use it, and the Jews use it, and it's apparently the Star of Moloch.
So there you go. I mean, I have a few issues with what he said. Number one, I wouldn't say that they worship Moloch, or they worship this dark entity. I would, however, say that they transact with it. You know, If you go to market and buy your food, you're not worshiping the food vendors. You're transacting with them. Okay? When you pay your taxes, you're not worshiping the fire department or the police department, but you are transacting with them for protection against fire and from the police, anything that might be dangerous in which you'd have to call them. So it's transactional. That's its first characteristic, okay? I give you something, you give me something. It's not like that with God. And if you're a part of any congregation that thinks that way, get out. Get out. You offer yourself unconditionally to the Creator. Unconditionally. And don't think you're smarter than the Creator, which is really your higher self, because you are a fractal of the Creator. You are, as a friend of mine says, a drop of the ocean, but the ocean in the drop. So your main job is to discover what you are. Self-realization and God-realization are the same thing. Cosmic consciousness is full mental realization with command of the causal and the astral and the physical. They can do miracles, they can do healings, they can do everything. We see this everywhere now, right? Remember that whack job over in Brazil, John of God? Oprah was visiting him, Hollywood stars were visiting him, and he could really heal people. I know people who went to him for healings. Why could he really heal people? Right? What was he working with? I don't know. He said he was working with the spirits of St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, and King Solomon himself, who I'm not even sure ever physically existed. He may be all myth. Jordan Maxwell said he was all myth. So if he never really existed, what would be pretending to be the spirit of Solomon on the other side? But my main point is that John of God could really heal people. He could take away cancer. He could do all kinds of things. But, and here's the big but, it later came out that he was molesting almost every young girl that was brought to him. And he would conduct his sessions alone with the parents out of the room. And he would have them, how do I put this, discharge him. He wouldn't necessarily penetrate them, but there had to be a discharge. He had to have an orgasm. So there was, think a couple ways you could do that, I suppose, right? Your hands, your mouth, right? All these girls, 13, 14, 15 years old. Then it came out that he was running a baby mill, selling babies. Very interesting. So these spirits that we talk about, I can almost kind of understand why people worship them. Because if you're going to choose a god and you're self-centered, you would want a god that gives you what you want. You want power, you want fame, you want money. Well, I'm going to worship this dude and I'm going to get all those things. It's epidemic in the world now. The cult is running the world right now. It's just completely and utterly running the world now. There's no other way to look at it. Okay? So John of God is one example. I would say the guy I wrote the book for, the Galactic Historian, is another example of somebody working with very negative entities and principalities. And certainly not what I would call the Holy Spirit, which, as I've said numerous times, and I will repeat, is a vibration that comes from the Creator itself, apprehended in human consciousness as either sound or light or both at the same time. That's the Holy Spirit. That's the voice of God. So if you can connect with the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of the Creator, why would you spend time with spirits, which are just individuated beings in non-physical form, also trying to migrate back to the Creator? Really no different than your dead grandparents or your dead great-grandparents. Okay, that's all it is. Much of the protection you have in life, if you believe in guardian spirits and that, is really your ancestors. Now, if you have a bad family line, as I did, those ancestors are more likely to want you to smoke and drink, so they'll come into your body and enjoy it through your body. If you get into a really corrupt family line, and then that family line needs somebody to come into it, and boom, just turn it 180 degrees. But that person who does that in a corrupt family line that's been going on for generations is going to be put through almost Christ-like trials, minus the crucifixion. Okay? Because you have to turn around all that energy. And that's your ancestral energy, which you can experience, by the way. There's even scientifically, they're talking about this now through the science of epigenetics, which is memory and behavior carried over through genetics. They have proven that the descendant of a tragic event can have memories of the tragic event even though they weren't physically alive. But their grandparents went through it, but the memories, they have the memories. That's epigenetics. Fascinating, right? DNA is very, very much tied to all of this, but I wouldn't get too much involved in it. It's a waste of time. I know people who just go, it's their whole thing. You know, genetics is spirituality. Spirituality is genetics. Not really, no. But I get it. I understand why they believe that. You know. And I suppose there's nothing wrong with believing it. You know, it makes complete sense when you think about it. So old Moloch. Now Moloch's just a name, right? Goes by many names, right? So how epidemic is this? Well, let's just take a look at this for a sec, okay? Somebody asked me to talk about this painting, and I didn't know what to make of it other than the gaudish colors, but it later came out that it was really, in many ways, if you put two of the paintings together, you see Baphomet in the center. I'm not completely convinced I see Baphomet there, but look, if this is a Rorschach painting, like one of those ink blots to get a reading on your consciousness that psychiatrists do, look at the center of that. Does that look like a pleasant thing? I mean, you can see so many things there, so many diabolical... There's an extraterrestrial at the top. Can you see it? It's like a gray with the big eyes. Okay? Underneath it, there's some other monstrous thing that looks like it has wings. Okay? Just an extremely unpleasant painting. But they're extremely unpleasant people. What do you expect? Okay? Now, many of these bloodlines were taken over by the cults. Okay? So, number one rule. Do not stop loving anyone or anything. Even the devil. Don't sympathize with him. But what is love? It's just like, okay, you're part of this creation. I don't know why completely, maybe I don't know why the Creator created you or allows you to exist, but the Creator does. I don't question the Creator, so I'm just going to love you as another thing in creation, a river, the wind, a tree, whatever. It's not you don't want to get into a relationship with it, okay? But unconditionally love it. Same thing with the demons. I know this is counterintuitive to everything you've been taught, and if you're coming from a Christian line or something like this, you have probably 33 generations of epigenetic memory teaching you the opposite of what I'm now telling you. But this is the only way to break free of it. This is the only way to transcend it. And transcendence is what you're trying to do. And transcending is where the greater love is. The greater love is in the transcendence. So you kind of have to do it. Kind of have to do it. Let's take a look at a little bit more material. So there you go, another take on the same thing. The Saturn death cult is the cult of Moloch. When you see Klaus Schwab in that weird spacesuit he wears with the shoulders and everything, that's a Saturnian priest, okay? So on some level, they're all in on it together, okay? It's not just a phenomenon that has Jewish participants, okay? It's much bigger than that now. And if I've led you to believe this is all Jewish, then maybe that's a bit of a misdirection. But I think that in many ways they're all sort of in favor on the push for the Third Temple. Why, I don't know, because I don't think that they really need those kinds of power sites or anything like that anymore. Yeah, so that's enough for today. And we'll pick up tomorrow. There's another chapter in The Human Devil. It's very long and convoluted. But I hope that you're picking up what's going on here. So let's just recap. It starts with the Industrial Revolution, the campaign of Baal, we'll say. Okay, and tomorrow we're going to tie in the last Free Breath chapter with the Human Devil chapter, how they were able to get some integral things done in the early part of the 20th century that allowed them to create the circumstance that we're in now. So I am Bruce McDonald, and this is, or has been, the Talamanca Review.